During our last video, we talked about the whole issue of suffering and considered a biblical response to the question, why would a good God allow suffering, especially in the life or in the lives of those who believe in Him? We mentioned certain situations which, though tragic, seem to be acceptable in our societies according to conventional wisdom. For instance, a terrorist getting blown up by either his or her own bomb, a drunk and reckless driver suffering a serious injury as a result of an accident he or she committed while driving under a drunken stupor, a rapist suffering mob justice on account of their defiling a child or raping a woman and infecting them with HIV. Whereas we somehow seem to accept these situations when we deem the person who commits such things to be guilty, it becomes a bit problematic for us, that is for you and for me, when we sense as though the person who is going through pain and suffering is innocent. It rattles us as we grapple with the question, why do bad things happen to good people? The first response to this question that we shared during our last video was, it's a stark reminder that we live in a fallen world. There's something wrong with creation as you and I know it. And we talked about the creation story in Genesis chapter 1 and 2, how God created everything to be perfect, but how after the fall, things went south, so to speak. I'm Reverend Isige, the senior pastor of CITAM Thika Road Church. Join me as we discuss the whole issue of suffering and seek another biblical response to the question, why do bad things happen to good people? And so why do bad things happen to good people? People who believe in the Most High God and who are trying at least to be good believers. I think another biblical response to this question is this: God sometimes uses our pain and suffering to accomplish His purposes. Think with me at what the book of James chapter 1 from verse 2 to 4 says. It says this: "Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing." Sometimes the suffering and pain that we go through are a trial that God allows you and me to go through just for a period of time, so that His perfect will may be established in our lives. Think with me of the story of Joseph in the book of Genesis chapter 37 all the way to the end of the Genesis, that is the chapter 50. First and foremost, Joseph was hated by his brothers, and because of this sibling rivalry, they sold him off as a slave, and he went as a slave to Egypt. When he got to Egypt, he got the opportunity to work in the house of one of the military officials, the top military officials, a man by the name Potiphar. But now it just happened that Potiphar's wife seemed to just love Joseph, and she fell in love with him in a literal way and wanted to have sexual relations with him. But Joseph, because of his commitment to God, decided that he was not going to fail God in any way, and he ran away from her sexual attempts. But that ended up going south again for him. He ended up being accused of sexual harassment, and he was thrown into prison. And so indeed it was like it as though he fell from the frying pan into the fire, first being sold off as a slave by his very own brothers, and then eventually landing in prison for a crime he didn't commit. But because of a gift that Joseph had, this ability to dream and to interpret dreams, while in prison, he ended up being called up by Pharaoh, who was the king of Egypt. And because of a dream that Pharaoh had, Joseph interpreted this dream, and that's what got him out of prison. The story doesn't end there. It just so happened that back home in Canaan, the land of Canaan, where his brothers and his father was, there was a severe famine. And through that severe famine, his brothers and his family back at home, they needed relief. Guess where they went to for relief? Yes, they went to Egypt. And guess who they went to stand before to ask for help? None other than this very Joseph. This Joseph that they had sold as a slave back home. The same Joseph who had landed in prison. And so they went before him. It's a long story with twists and turns. But the long and short of it is this, that Joseph ended up helping the very people who had wished him evil. Look at how Joseph interpreted this entire matter. You find this in the book of Genesis, chapter 45, verse 5. Joseph, speaking to his brothers, says this, "Now do not be grieved or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life." In chapter 50 of Genesis, verse 20, he says this, as speaking to his brothers also, "As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring out this present result, to preserve many people." Amen. God can indeed use your suffering and pain to bring something greater, something beautiful, something completely unexpected, just out and through your suffering and your pain. So you may be going through some emotional turmoil. You may be going through some physical or mental pain. It is quite possible that at the end of the pain and the suffering, God has got something great, something beautiful for you. I want to encourage you today. Let's stand together through the pain, through the suffering, and let's trust God to bring out beauty for ashes, even joy for the oil of mourning, or for the spirit of mourning. Thank you for watching. Feel free to get in touch with us and give us feedback. You can ask a question through our social media platforms. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. The details will appear on your screen right below. God bless you. My name is Reverend Kenny Isige, Senior Pastor of CITAM Thika Road Church, and you're watching CITAM Church Online.